Have you ever stood in a moment so quiet? You could hear your own heart breaking, yet feel it mending too. Oh, my dear friends, it's Eva here, your 65-year-old storyteller from Eufaula, Alabama, where the Chattahoochee River hums and the dogwoods bloom. I'm sitting on my porch, sipping sweet tea, thinking of you all my sisters who've loved, lost, and kept on going. Life at our age, it's like a quilt, ain't it, a patch with joy and sorrow, each stitch a story. I've got one to share, raw and real, about a woman who thought she'd lost her place, only to find her strength. If it touches you, hit that subscribe button and join our circle. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, how you're holding up. Let's weave our stories together, like old friends by the fire. The air in Nathan Mitchell's law office smelled of brewed coffee and old wood, the kind of scent that lingers in places where hard truths are spoken. I sat there. Eleanor Harper Ellie to those who know me best, 68 years old, my silver hair pulled into a neat bun, my hands clasped tight in my lap. My cardigan felt thin against the November chill seeping through the window. But it wasn't the cold making me tremble. Across the table sat my daughter, Claire, her blonde highlights catching the autumn sunlight, her Apple Watch glinting as she crossed her arms. Beside her, Ryan, her husband, shifted in his seat, his tie loosened like he'd rather be anywhere else. The weight of their stares pressed against me, but I held my ground. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. "Mom, you can't do this," Claire said, her voice sharp, the kind of tone she used when she thought she could talk her way out of anything. "The house is ours. You signed it over. This lien thing is ridiculous." I looked at her. My little girl, who once clung to my skirt during thunderstorms, now a 35-year-old woman who saw me as an obstacle. Her words stung, but I'd felt worse these past 3 months. I thought of the suitcases lined up on the curb of our home on Cedar Street, the rain soaking through my coat, the note in Claire's handwriting. "If you want to stay, we have the garage. Your loving daughter." That moment had broken something in me, but it had also forged something stronger. "Claire," I said, my voice soft but steady, "you think I'm invisible. You think you can push me aside, sell the house your father and I built, and I'll just fade away. But I've paid for that house every month, $1,867, for 2 years since Frank passed. I built it with love, and I won't let you erase me." Nathan, the young lawyer with kind eyes and a flannel shirt that made him look more like a teacher than a legal hawk, slid a document across the oak table. "Mrs. Harper has established an equitable lien," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Based on her consistent mortgage payments, she has a legal interest in the property. Selling the house on Cedar Street won't be possible without addressing this lien." Claire's face flushed, her manicured nails digging into her palms. "This is about Highland Ranch, isn't it? You're jealous we're moving up. Mom, you want to ruin our dream." Her words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I thought of the home on Cedar Street, its colonial brick facade, the tulip garden Frank and I planted every spring, the fireplace where we'd roasted marshmallows with Claire on Thanksgiving nights. That house wasn't just walls and a roof, it was 35 years of my life. My love, my dreams. Claire wanted to sell it to strangers, to fund a mansion in Highland Ranch where she could post Instagram photos and play the part of someone she wasn't. I wasn't jealous. I was heartbroken. Dreams aren't built on someone else's pain. "Honey," I said, the old endearment slipping out despite everything. "You and Ryan have a family, a future, but that house is my past, my present, and I'm fighting for it." Ryan cleared his throat, his voice low. "Look, Mrs. Harper, we appreciate what you've done, but legally, the house is ours. You can't just legally." Nathan interrupted, leaning forward. "Mrs. Harper's contributions give her a claim." You'd need years of litigation to untangle this, and your credit scores won't survive the missed mortgage payments. Highland Ranch will be someone else's dream by then. Claire's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her face. I saw it then, the crack in her armor, the realization that her carefully curated life was slipping. Ryan looked at her, then down at the table, his fingers tapping nervously. I wanted to reach out, to tell her I still loved her, but the weight of those suitcases held me back. I'd spent too long shrinking myself to make her comfortable. The room fell silent. The only sound, the faint hum of traffic on Dodge Street outside. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the floor, like the years stretching between me and the little girl who once called me her hero. I remembered a Thanksgiving in 1980 when Claire was 5, her pigtails bouncing as she helped me roll dough for pumpkin pie. Frank had been there, his laugh filling the kitchen, his voice off-key as he sang along to Johnny Cash on the radio. That house, that life, was ours. How had it come to this, Mom? Claire said, softer now, almost pleading. Why are you doing this? We need the house in Highland Ranch. It's for Sophie, for our family. I looked at her, my heart aching for my granddaughter. Sophie. With her bright eyes and gap-toothed smile, I thought of the times I'd read Charlotte's Web to her, her small hand in mine, and the way Claire had started pulling her away, as if my love was something to rations. Sophie deserves a home filled with love. I said, not one built on pushing me out. I'm not doing this to hurt you, Claire. I'm doing it because I'm still here. And I matter. Nathan glanced at me, a quiet nod of respect. He was Barb's grandson, and I could see her fire in him. Barb, my dearest friend, who'd picked me up that rainy day 3 months ago when I had nowhere to go. I'd called her from the curb, my voice breaking. Barb. They've put me in the garage. She'd been there in 20 minutes, her old Ford rattling up, her Irish lilt sharp with indignation. Claire's lost her damn mind. Ellie, come stay with me. That day felt like a lifetime ago, but it was the spark that led me here, to this office, to this moment. I'd been paying the mortgage on a house that wasn't mine anymore. Not on paper, but in every way that mattered. Frank and I had bought it in 1978, a fixer-upper in Dundee, Omaha, with creaky floors and a fireplace that smoked until we learned its quirks. We'd painted the walls pale green, planted tulips, raised Claire. After Frank's heart gave out 2 years ago, I'd signed the house over to Claire and Ryan, thinking it would help them, with little Sophie and their tight finances. But I kept paying the mortgage, month after month, because I couldn't let go, not of the house, not of the family I thought we were. Claire leaned forward, her voice low, almost a hiss. You're being selfish. Mom, you're 68. You don't need a big house. We found a nice place in Pacific Springs, a senior community. You'd be comfortable there. Pacific Springs. The name twisted in my chest like a knife. A senior community, with neat lawns and bingo nights, where I'd be tucked away, out of sight. I'd visited one once, for a friend, and the sterile halls had felt like a waiting room for the end. I don't need comfortable, I said, my voice rising despite myself. I need my home, Claire. The one I built with your father, where we raised you, where Sophie learned to walk. You don't get to decide I'm done living. Ryan shifted again, his face pale. This is getting out of hand, he muttered. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Didn't mean, I echoed. Turning to him, you put my suitcases on the curb. Ryan, you let Claire write that note. You knew I was paying for your life, and you thought I'd just disappear. Claire's eyes darted away, and for a moment, I saw something guilt, maybe, or shame, but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the hard set of her jaw. We needed space, she said, her voice cold. Sophie needs a playroom, and Ryan's been promised a promotion. Highland Ranch is perfect for us. I closed my eyes, picturing Sophie, her crayons scattered across the kitchen table, her laughter when I taught her to plant tulip bulbs. I'd do anything for that girl. But not this, not losing myself. I opened my eyes and looked at Nathan. What happens next? He adjusted his glasses, his voice steady. If they try to sell without addressing the lien, it'll be tied up in court for years. The bank won't wait, missed payments will tank their credit. Mrs. Harper, you've got the upper hand here. Claire's face crumpled, not in tears, but in frustration, like a child denied a toy. This isn't fair, she said, her voice breaking. You're punishing us. I wanted to reach across the table, to hold her like I did when she was small, but I couldn't. Not yet. Fair, I said softly. Fair is 35 years of love and sacrifice. Fair is not being pushed into a garage like an old piece of furniture. I'm not punishing you, Claire. I'm standing up for me. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the tick of a clock on the wall. I thought of Frank, his warm hand on mine, his voice saying, Ellie, you're stronger than you know. I doubted that for years, but today, in this small office with its coffee-stained carpet and autumn light, I felt it. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was done being invisible. Nathan gathered his papers, his voice gentle. We can negotiate terms, but Mrs. Harper's lien stands. You'll need to decide how to proceed. Claire and Ryan exchanged a look, their faces grim. I stood, my legs steadier than I expected, and smoothed my cardigan. I'll be at Barb's, I said. You know where to find me. As I walked out, the bell above the door jingled and the crisp November air hit my face. I drove back through Dundee, past the brick homes and bare sycamore trees, until I reached Cedar Street. The house stood there, its tulip garden dormant under a dusting of frost, its windows dark. I didn't go in. Instead, I sat in my car, the heater humming, and let the memories wash over me. Thanksgiving dinners, Claire's first steps, Frank's laughter. That house was my heart, and I was fighting for it, for me. But this story, dear ones, doesn't start here, in a lawyer's office with papers and hard words. It starts 3 months ago, on a rainy day in August, when I came home from Boulder and found my suitcases on the curb. That was the day I thought I'd lost everything, the day I began to find myself again. Let me take you back there, to the rain and the note, to the moment that changed everything. If this moment touched you, if you felt my heart in these words, I'd love for you to join me on this journey. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, whether it's Omaha or somewhere far away. Share what makes you feel seen, what makes you fight for yourself. I want to hear your story, just as I'm sharing mine. The rain came down in a soft, steady patter, the kind that soaks you through before you realize it. I stood on the curb of Cedar Street, my coat clinging to my shoulders, staring at the 4 suitcases lined up like silent sentinels. It was August, 3 months before that day in Nathan's office, and I'd just come home to Omaha from Boulder, where I'd spent Thanksgiving with my sister, Louise. All I wanted was to slip into my old armchair, brew a pot of Earl Grey, and let the familiar creak of the house on Cedar Street wrap around me like a quilt. But there they were, my suitcases, damp and forlorn, with a note tucked under the handle of the largest one. I knew Claire's handwriting before I even picked it up. Those sharp, hurried letters she'd always scribbled since she was a girl. If you want to stay, we have the garage. Your loving daughter. I don't know how long I stood there, dear ones, the rain trickling down my neck, my heart heavy as the grey clouds overhead. I was 68, too old for surprises like this, too young to be cast aside. The house loomed behind me, its colonial brick facade as familiar as my own reflection, but it felt different now, like a friend who'd turned their back. The tulip garden Frank and I planted every spring was overgrown. The red and yellow blooms choked by weeds. The pale green walls we'd painted in '78 were hidden beneath Claire's new grey paint, cold and modern, like something out of a magazine. I reached for the note, my fingers trembling, and read it again, as if the words might change. They didn't. I thought of Frank, my husband, gone 2 years now. His warm laugh and off-key singing to Johnny Cash on our old radio. We'd bought this house when Claire was a baby, a fixer-upper in Dundee, Omaha, with a smoky fireplace and floors that creaked under every step. We'd made it ours, painting the kitchen green, hanging curtains I sewed myself, carving out a life. After Frank's heart gave out, I'd signed the house over to Claire and Ryan, thinking it would help them, with little Sophie and their stretched budget. But I kept paying the mortgage $867 every month because I couldn't let go. Not of the house, not of the family I thought we were. How naive I'd been. The rain blurred my glasses, and I wiped them with my sleeve, my breath catching. I didn't cry often, not since Frank's funeral. But the tears came now, quiet and hot, mixing with the drizzle. I felt small, like a leaf fallen from the sycamores lining Cedar Street, unnoticed and swept away. I'd given everything to Claire nights, rocking her through fevers, years working extra shifts at the supermarket to pay for her college, weekends watching Sophie so she and Ryan could have date nights in Old Market. And now, this, a note, a garage. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers stiff from the cold, and called the bank. First National Bank of Omaha. "This is Trevor." A young voice answered, polite but tired. I cleared my throat, trying to sound steady. "This is Eleanor Harper. I need to confirm the mortgage payment for 1420 Cedar Street." "Yes, ma'am," Trevor said. Keys clicking. "Your automatic payment of $1,067 went through last Friday, as scheduled." I thanked him, my voice barely a whisper, and hung up. So it was true. I was still paying for the roof over their heads, and they'd put my life on the curb. I walked to the garage, the side door unlocked, and stepped inside. The air smelled of damp concrete and motor oil, the single bulb overhead casting a weak glow. There was a twin mattress against the wall, a folding table with a lamp, and my clothes hung on a portable rack, my books, photos, and keepsakes Frank's vinyl records. Claire's old drawings were stacked in cardboard boxes labeled Mom Stuff in Claire's handwriting. I sank onto the mattress, the springs creaking under me, and looked through the small window. The house stood there, its windows glowing with light, but it felt a world away. I saw Sophie's silhouette, her small figure dancing in the living room, and my heart ached. I'd lost my place in that world. I don't know what hurt more, the note, the suitcases, or the realization that I'd let this happen. I'd seen the signs. Hadn't I? The way Claire and Ryan exchanged glances when I talked about repainting the kitchen, the not-so-subtle brochures for Pacific Springs, that senior community in West Omaha, left on the counter, the way they'd moved my armchair to the basement last Christmas, claiming Sophie needed space for her toys. Small things, sharp as splinters, that I'd ignored to keep the peace. I'd shrunk myself, bit by bit, to avoid being a burden. And now, here I was, in a garage, my life packed in boxes. I called Barb Mitchell, my dearest friend since our teaching days at Central High. Her voice answered on the first ring, thick with her Irish lilt. "Ellie, what's wrong? You sound like you've seen a ghost." "They've put me in the garage. Barb," I said, my voice breaking. "Claire, she left my suitcases on the curb with a note. They want the house for themselves." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "Good Lord, Ellie. Claire's lost her damn mind. I'm coming over, 20 minutes, and don't you move." I sat there, the phone warm in my hand, staring at the boxes. One was open, and I pulled out a photo of Claire at 5, her pigtails tied with red ribbons, grinning as she held a pumpkin pie we'd baked for Thanksgiving. I remembered that day in 1980, the kitchen warm with the smell of cinnamon. Frank teasing Claire about her flower-covered nose. We'd laughed until our sides hurt. The fireplace crackling. Johnny Cash singing Ring of Fire on the radio. That was the home I'd built, the one I thought would always be ours. How had it slipped away? Barb's Ford pickup rattled up the driveway, its headlights cutting through the rain. She marched in, her red raincoat dripping, her grey curls wild. Ellie Harper. "Get your coat," she said, her voice a mix of fury and love. "You're not staying in this damp hole. You're coming to my place in Midtown Crossing, and we'll figure this out." I managed a small smile, the first since I'd seen the suitcases. Barb was 70, a retired nurse with a laugh like a foghorn and a heart bigger than Nebraska. She'd been there when Frank died, bringing casseroles and bad jokes to pull me through. She'd raised 2 kids alone after her husband left, and though her son had drifted away, she never let it dim her fire. "Barb." "I don't know what to do," I said, my voice trembling. "This is my home." She knelt beside me, her hands warm on mine. "It's your home." "All right, and Claire's got no right to treat you like this. You've been paying that mortgage, haven't you?" I nodded. "Every month, since Frank passed. I thought it would help them." Barb's eyes narrowed. "Help them? They're living rent-free while you bankroll their life. And they thank you by tossing you out." "Oh, honey, we're not letting this slide. My grandson Nathan's a lawyer, specializes in elder rights. We'll talk to him tomorrow." I hesitated. The idea of legal action feeling like a betrayal. Claire was my daughter, my only child. I remembered her at 10 reading Charlotte's Web with me, her eyes wide at Wilbur's bravery. I'd taught her to be strong, hadn't I? But somewhere along the way, she'd learned to see me as less important, less necessary. "I don't know if I can fight her, Barb," I said. "She's my girl." Barb squeezed my hand, her voice soft but fierce. "You're not fighting her, Ellie. You're fighting for you. You've given her everything, your time, your money, your dreams. It's time you stood up for Eleanor Harper, the woman who built that house with Frank, who raised a daughter and loved her through every storm. You're not invisible, not to me, not to anyone who matters." Her words were like a match struck in the dark, a tiny flame in the cold of that garage. I looked at the photo of Claire, then set it back in the box. I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier. "Let's go to your place, and call Nathan." Barb grinned, pulling me to my feet. "That's my girl. Now grab that coat before we both catch our death." We loaded my suitcases into her truck, the rain still falling, the house on Cedar Street fading into the dusk. As we drove to Midtown Crossing, Barb turned on the radio, and Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues filled the cab. I closed my eyes, remembering Frank singing along, his hand on mine. I felt the weight of the day, the betrayal, the loneliness, but also something new, a spark, small but stubborn, telling me I wasn't done. I was Eleanor Harper, and I was going to fight for my place in this world. That rainy day was just the beginning. Dear ones, the moment I thought I'd lost everything, but found a piece of myself instead. It led me to Barb's apartment, to Nathan's office, to a journey I never expected. If this story stirs something in you, if you've ever felt pushed aside but kept going, I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, whether it's Omaha or beyond. Share what makes you hold on, what makes you fight. Your story matters, just as mine does. The late August sun hung low over Omaha, casting golden light across the sycamores on Cedar Street, but it couldn't warm the chill in my heart. I sat at Barb Mitchell's kitchen table in her cozy Midtown Crossing apartment. a mug of coffee cooling in my hands. The rain from that day on the curb was gone. But the weight of Claire's note, "If you want to stay," we have the garage still pressed against me. It had been a week since I'd found my suitcases. A week since I'd moved into Barb's spare room with its quilted bedspread and view of the city's twinkling lights. I was 68, dear ones, and I'd thought my days of starting over were long gone. But here I was, piecing together what was left of me, trying to understand how my daughter had become a stranger. Barb bustled around the kitchen, her grey curls bouncing as she slid a plate of oatmeal cookies toward me. "Eat something." "Ellie," she said, her Irish lilt sharp with concern. "You've been staring at that coffee like it holds all the answers." I managed a small smile, picking up a cookie but not biting into it. "I'm trying. Barb, it's just, I keep seeing those suitcases, the way they sat there in the rain. I keep hearing Claire's voice in that note, calling herself my loving daughter." "How did we get here?" Barb sat across from me, her hands folded, her eyes fierce. "Claire's got no excuse, honey. You've been paying that mortgage $167 a month. You said for 2 years, keeping a roof over their heads. And they thank you by tossing you out. That's not love, that's greed." Her words stung, but they rang true. I'd called the First National Bank of Omaha again yesterday, just to be sure. And the clerk confirmed it. My automatic payments were still ticking along, propping up Claire and Ryan's life while I slept in a guest room. I thought of the house on Cedar Street, its colonial brick facade, the tulip garden Frank and I tended every spring. I'd signed it over to Claire after Frank died, thinking it would help her and Ryan, with little Sophie and their dreams of a better future. But I'd kept paying the mortgage, month after month, because letting go felt like losing Frank all over again. Foolish, maybe, but it was my way of holding on. I should have seen it coming, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The way Claire started rearranging the house, painting over our green walls with that cold grey. The brochures for Pacific Springs she left on the counter, like I was already halfway out the door. And Ryan, always nodding along, saying I'd be happier somewhere else. Barb snorted, grabbing a cookie. Happier. In one of those senior places with bad coffee and bingo nights. You're Eleanor Harper, for God's sake. You taught half of Omaha to love Shakespeare. You built that house with Frank. They don't get to decide your life. I looked out the window, the city lights blurring as my eyes stung. Barb was right, but it didn't ease the ache. I remembered a moment from 1985 when Claire was 10, curled up on our couch with Charlotte's Web, her voice soft as she read about Wilbur's courage. I'd been a high school English teacher then, before I retired early to care for Frank when his heart started failing. I'd dreamed of writing a book, maybe a novel about small-town Nebraska, but I'd set it aside for Claire's college fund, for Frank's medical bills. Every sacrifice felt worth it. Until now. Now, I wondered if I'd given too much, if I'd taught Claire to take without giving back. The doorbell buzzed, and Barb jumped up. "That'll be Nathan," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "He's got some ideas about that lien business." Nathan Mitchell, Barb's grandson, stepped inside, his flannel shirt and easy smile making him look younger than his 32 years. He was a lawyer, specializing in elder rights, with a quiet passion that reminded me of Barb. "Mrs. Harper," he said, setting a folder on the table. "I've looked into your situation. You've got a strong case for an equitable lien. Those mortgage payments you've been making, they give you a legal interest in the house, even if your name's not on the title anymore." I blinked, the words sinking in slowly. "A lien. You mean I could stop them from selling?" Nathan nodded, opening the folder. "Exactly. You've been paying $1,867 a month for 2 years, without any benefit to yourself. That's a verbal contract, at minimum. If Claire and Ryan try to sell, the bank will see your lien, and it'll tie things up. They'd need to settle with you first. Hope flickered, but it was tangled with guilt. Claire was my daughter, my only child. Fighting her felt like betraying the girl who'd once drawn me pictures of tulips, who'd cried in my arms when her first boyfriend broke her heart. I don't want to hurt her. Nathan, I said, I want my home. Barb leaned forward, her voice firm. You're not hurting her, Ellie. You're holding her accountable. There's a difference, and from what I heard at the book club last week, Claire's not exactly innocent. I frowned, my stomach tightening. What did you hear? Barb hesitated, then sighed. Claire was there, sipping wine, bragging about their big plans. They're selling the house to buy a place in Highland Ranch, that fancy suburb with gated estates and private schools. She's been posting about it on Instagram, showing off floor plans, acting like it's already done. Not a word about you, Ellie, or the fact you're still paying for their life. The room seemed to tilt, the air thinning. Highland Ranch. I'd driven through it once, all sleek mansions and manicured lawns, a world away from our modest Dundee neighborhood. Claire wanted that life, the kind you see in glossy ads, where everything's perfect and nothing's real. And she was willing to sell our home, Frank's and mine. Sophie's first steps, 35 years of memories to get it. She's selling my house, I whispered, the words tasting bitter. Without even telling me, Barb reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. She thinks she can, honey. But she doesn't know you like I do. You're stronger than you think. I wanted to believe her, but the hurt was a weight I couldn't shake. I stood, needing air, and walked to the window. Omaha stretched out below, its lights glowing against the dusk. I thought of 1982, a Thanksgiving when Claire helped me bake apple pie. Her small hands sticky with dough, Frank teasing us about our masterpiece. The kitchen had smelled of cinnamon, the radio playing Folsom Prison Blues, and we'd laughed until our sides ached. That was the home I'd built, the one Claire was ready to trade for a bigger garage and a better zip code. I need to talk to her, I said, turning back to Barb and Nathan. Before we do anything legal, I need to give her a chance to explain. Barb's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. You sure, Ellie? She's had plenty of chances. I'm sure, I said, though my heart wasn't. She's still my girl. The next morning, I drove to Cedar Street, the familiar route winding through Dundee's brick homes and leafy streets. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My stomach knotted. The house looked different now, its grey paint like a mask over the home I knew. I parked and walked to the front door, my heart pounding as I rang the bell. I'd lived here since before Claire was born, but I felt like a stranger, waiting for permission to enter. Claire answered, her hair pulled back, a coffee mug in hand. Mom, she said, surprise flickering across her face before she masked it with a tight smile. We weren't expecting you. I need to talk to you and Ryan, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. About the house. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. The living room was unrecognizable. The green walls gone, replaced by sterile grey. My reading lamp was missing, swapped for a sleek floor lamp that looked like it cost more than my car. The family photos I'd arranged on the fireplace mantel were rearranged. Frank's pictures pushed to the back. Ryan emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel, his collared shirt wrinkled. Mrs. Harper, he said, his tone cautious. What's this about? I heard you're selling the house. I said, my eyes on Claire. Barb told me at book club. You're planning to move to Highland Ranch. Claire's face hardened, but she didn't deny it. We were going to tell you, she said, her voice clipped. Once it was finalized, I echoed, my chest tightening. This is my home. Claire, your father and I built it. We raised you here, and you're selling it without a word. Claire sighed. setting her mug down with a clink. Mom, we get that you're attached, but we have to do what's best for our family. Sophie needs a better school district, and Ryan's up for a promotion. Highland Ranch is perfect. Your family, I said, the words heavy. And what am I? Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Ryan shifted, looking at the floor. Mom, Claire said finally, her tone patronizing. You signed the house over to us. We appreciate everything. But it's our property now. We decide what happens. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I've been paying the mortgage. Claire, 2 years, $1,867 a month, to keep this roof over your heads. Claire's eyes flickered, but she shrugged. That was your choice, Mom. We didn't ask you to. My hands trembled, and I clasped them together. I did it because that's what family does. I did it for you, for Sophie. We're grateful, Ryan said, his voice flat. But it doesn't change the legal situation. The house is ours. So my 35 years here. My money. My love, none of it matters, I asked, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. Claire stepped forward, her smile tight. Mom, you're making this dramatic. We'll help you find a nice place. Like Pacific Springs. You'll be happy there. Happy. The word was a slap. I saw Sophie's toys scattered in the corner, and my heart ached for her, but I couldn't let this go. I'm not going to Pacific Springs, I said, my voice firm. And I've stopped the mortgage payments. If you want to sell my home, you'll pay for it yourselves. Claire's face paled. You, what, Mom? Our credit, your credit, I said, cutting her off, is your problem, just like this house is mine. Ryan's jaw tightened. This is low, Mrs. Harper. We're trying to build a life here. I looked at him, then at Claire, my daughter, who stood there with no trace of the girl I'd raised. Your father would be ashamed of you. Claire, I said, my voice breaking. And for the first time, so am I. I turned and walked out, the door closing softly behind me. The August sun was warm, but I felt cold, the weight of my words settling in. I'd crossed a line, but I couldn't go back. As I drove to Barb's, I felt something shift, a spark, growing into a flame, telling me I wasn't done fighting. That day, dear ones, was when I started to see the truth, painful as it was. It led me to the Blue Moon Diner, to new friends, to a fight I never thought I'd face. If this story resonates, if you've ever had to stand up when it hurt, I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, Omaha or beyond. Share what keeps you going, what makes you fight. Your story matters, just as mine does. The November light slanted through the window of Nathan Mitchell's law office, painting the oak table in shades of gold and shadow. I sat there. Eleanor Harper Ellie to those who've known me through the years, my hand steady despite the storm in my chest. At 68, I thought I'd face my hardest battles, but here I was, across from my daughter, Claire, and her husband, Ryan, fighting for the home that held my life story. The air smelled of brewed coffee and old paper, a quiet reminder of the weight of this moment. 3 months had passed since I'd found my suitcases on the curb of Cedar Street. 3 months since Claire's note had shattered my world. If you want to stay, we have the garage. Today, I wasn't just fighting for a house, I was fighting for me. Claire sat stiffly, her blonde hair catching the sunlight, her manicured nails tapping the table. Her Apple Watch glinted, a symbol of the life she chased, one of Highland Ranch mansions and Instagram perfection. Ryan, in a loosened tie, avoided my eyes, his fingers fidgeting with a pen. Nathan, Barb's grandson, leaned forward, his flannel shirt at odds with the legal folder in his hands. Mrs. Harper, he said, his voice calm but firm. We're here to discuss the equitable lien on the property at 1420 Cedar Street. based on your mortgage payments. $1,867 a month for 2 years. You have a legal interest in the house. Claire's eyes flashed, her voice sharp. This is absurd. Mom, you can't just slap a lien on our house. You signed it over to us. It's ours. I looked at her, my little girl who'd once curled up beside me to read Charlotte's Web. Now a 35-year-old stranger who saw me as an obstacle. Her words cut deep, but I'd felt sharper pain, the rain soaking my coat that August day. The cold of the garage where my life was boxed up. I thought of Frank, my husband, gone 2 years. His laughter echoing in the kitchen we'd built. That house on Cedar Street wasn't just brick and mortar. It was 35 years of love, of Thanksgiving pies, of tulip bulbs planted with hope each spring. Claire wanted to sell it to strangers, to fund a life that didn't include me. Claire, I said, my voice soft but unwavering. You think I'm invisible. You think you can push me into a garage, sell the home your father and I built, and I'll fade away. But I've paid for that house every month, since Frank passed. I did it for you, for Sophie, because that's what family does. I won't let you erase me. Nathan slid a document across the table, his eyes steady. The lien is based on Mrs. Harper's contributions. She's paid over $44,000 since the title transfer. Legally. Claire, Ryan, you can't sell without addressing this. The bank won't allow it. Claire's face flushed, her voice rising. This is about Highland Ranch, isn't it? You're jealous. Mom, you can't stand that we're building something better, something for Sophie. Her words were a knife, twisting in the soft places of my heart. Jealous I'd never wanted more than the life Frank and I had a modest home in Dundee, Omaha, with creaky floors and a fireplace that warmed our Thanksgivings. I thought of Sophie, my granddaughter, her gap-toothed smile as we planted tulips last spring. I'd do anything for her, but not this. Not losing myself. I'm not jealous, honey, I said, the old endearment slipping out. I'm heartbroken. That house is my life, my love. You don't get to take it just because you want a bigger garage. Ryan cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. Mrs. Harper, we didn't mean for it to go this far. We needed space. Sophie needs a playroom. And my promotion space, I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. You put my suitcases on the curb. Ryan, you let Claire write that note. You knew I was paying your mortgage, and you thought I'd just disappear. Claire's eyes darted away, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. I saw it, but it wasn't enough, not yet. I remembered a moment from 1998 when Frank and I moved into the house on Cedar Street. Claire was a baby, her crib tucked in the corner of our bedroom. We'd painted the walls pale green, laughing as paint splattered our clothes. Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire playing on the radio. That was the home I'd built, the one Claire was ready to trade for a gated estate in Highland Ranch. I closed my eyes, steadying myself, then opened them to meet hers. I've been to the bank, I said. First National confirmed I've paid every month. I've talked to Nathan, and I know my rights. If you want to sell, you'll need to pay the mortgage yourselves or settle with me. Nathan nodded, adjusting his glasses. If you try to sell without addressing the lien, it'll be tied up in court for years. Missed payments will hit your credit hard. Highland Ranch won't wait. Claire's jaw tightened, her voice low. You're punishing us, Mom. You're choosing a house over your family. The accusation stung, and for a moment, I faltered. I thought of Frank's last days, his hand weak in mine, his voice a whisper. Keep the house for Claire. Ellie, it's her home. Had I betrayed that promise? But then I remembered the garage, the boxes labeled Mom's stuff, the way Sophie's laughter had faded behind closed doors. I wasn't choosing a house, I was choosing myself, something I hadn't done in years. No, Claire, I said, my voice trembling but clear. I'm not choosing a house, I'm choosing not to be erased. 35 years. I built that home with your father. I raised you there, loved you through every scraped knee and broken heart. You don't get to decide I'm done living." The room fell silent. The only sound the faint hum of traffic on Dodge Street. Claire's eyes glistened, but she blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. Ryan stared at the table, his pen still. Nathan glanced at me, a quiet nod of respect, and I felt a surge of strength, like the first tulip pushing through winter frost. I thought of Barb, waiting outside in her Ford, her words echoing, "You're fighting for you." Ellie, and I was. Claire leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you want?" "Mom, money, a cut of the sale." I shook my head, my heart heavy but sure. "I want my home, sell it back to me, for the remaining mortgage balance. I'll keep paying, but it'll be mine again." Ryan's head snapped up. "That's insane. The house is worth 3 times that." "It's worth what I put into it," I said. 35 years of love, repairs, memories. That's my price." Claire laughed, a brittle sound. "You can't be serious. We've already put a deposit on Highland Ranch. Then you'll need to figure that out," I said, standing, my legs steadier than I expected. "I'm not moving to Pacific Springs, and I'm not fading away. You can fight this in court, but Nathan says it'll take years, and your credit won't survive. Highland Ranch will be someone else's dream." Nathan gathered his papers, his voice calm. "We can negotiate terms, but the lien stands. You'll need to decide soon." Claire's face crumpled, not in tears, but in frustration, like a child denied a prize. Ryan looked at her, then at me, his expression unreadable. I smoothed my cardigan, my heart pounding but resolute. "I'll be at Barb's," I said. "You know where to find me." As I walked out, the bell above the door jingled, and the crisp November air hit my face. Barb was waiting in her truck, the radio playing Country Road softly. She grinned as I climbed in. "How'd it go?" "Ellie, did you give him hell?" I managed a small laugh. "The first in days. Not hell, Barb, just the truth." She squeezed my hand, her eyes bright. "That's my girl." "Now, let's get some pie at the Blue Moon Diner. You've earned it." We drove through Dundee, past the brick homes and bare trees, the city settling into autumn's quiet. I thought of the past 3 months, the diner where I'd started working, the customers who'd become friends, the strength I'd found in small acts. I'd taken a job at the Blue Moon Diner in Benson, a place with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that played Sinatra and Cash. My feet ached after shifts, but the tips in my pocket were mine, earned by my own hands. I'd met folks like Joe, a Vietnam vet who tipped extra for my coffee refills, and Maria, a single mom who shared stories of her kids. They saw me, in a way Claire hadn't in years. I thought of Sophie, too, her crayons scattered across my old kitchen table, her laughter when we read Charlotte's Web. I'd fought for her today, in a way, for the home she'd grow up remembering. But I'd fought for me most of all, for the woman who'd given everything and was done being invisible. Back at Barb's, I sat by the window, watching the city lights. I remembered a Thanksgiving in 1982 when Claire and I baked apple pie, Frank teasing us about our flour-covered aprons. The kitchen had smelled of cinnamon, the radio playing Folsom Prison Blues, and we'd laughed until our sides hurt. That was the home I was fighting for, the one I'd reclaim, no matter what came next. This moment, dear ones, was the heart of my fight, the day I stood up and said I mattered. It wasn't the end, there were battles still to come, choices to make, and a life to rebuild. But it was the day I became Ellie Harper again, not just Claire's mother or Frank's widow. If this story stirs something in you, if you've ever had to fight for your place, I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, Omaha or beyond. Share what makes you stand tall, what keeps you going. Your story is part of mine, and I'm listening. The December frost had settled over Omaha, dusting the tulip garden on Cedar Street with a shimmer that caught the morning light. I stood in the kitchen of my home mine again, after months of fighting watching sunlight spill through the window, warming the pale green walls I'd repainted myself. At 68, Eleanor Harper, Ellie to those who know my heart, thought I'd lost this place forever. But here I was, stirring a pot of coffee, the familiar creak of the floorboards under my feet. The house on Cedar Street, with its colonial brick and fireplace, was more than a victory. It was a testament to the woman I'd become, the one who'd stood up to her daughter, Claire, and said, I matter. 3 weeks had passed since that day in Nathan Mitchell's law office, when I'd faced Claire and Ryan and demanded my home back. The memory of Claire's flushed face, her sharp words, "You're choosing a house over your family," still lingered, but so did the strength I'd felt, like a tulip pushing through frozen earth. They'd agreed to sell the house back to me for the remaining mortgage balance, a sum I'd scraped together with my savings and the tips I'd earned at the Blue Moon Diner. It wasn't easy, but it was mine every squeaky step, every memory etched in these walls. I moved through the house, dear ones, touching the familiar, a photo of Frank and me on our 20th anniversary, his arm around me in the tulip garden, Claire's childhood drawings, tucked in a frame by the fireplace, Frank's old Johnny Cash records, now proudly displayed in the living room. Claire had painted the walls grey, cold and modern, but I'd spent weekends with a roller and a can of pale green, bringing back the warmth Frank and I had chosen in 78. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon again, from the apple pie I'd baked last night, a small act of reclaiming. I wasn't just rebuilding a house, I was rebuilding myself. The doorbell rang, and I smiled, knowing it was Barb Mitchell, my rock through the storm. She bustled in, her red scarf trailing, a tin of oatmeal cookies in hand. Ellie Harper. "This place looks like you again," she said, her Irish lilt bright as she surveyed the green walls. Good Lord, that grey was like living in a funeral parlour. I laughed, setting out mugs for coffee. "It's coming along, Barb. Still some work to do, but it's home." Barb sat at the kitchen table, her eyes softening. "You did it, honey. You fought for this place, and you won." I'm prouder than a peacock. I poured coffee, the steam curling between us. I couldn't have done it without you. Or Nathan, or the folks at the diner. Barb waved a hand, grabbing a cookie. "Pfft. We just cheered you on. You're the one who stood up to Claire and that slick husband of hers." Speaking of, any word from them, I shook my head, the ache returning. Not since the closing. Claire made it clear she thinks I chose the house over her. Ryan sent a text, oddly enough, saying he was sorry things got so messy. But Claire, she's still angry. Barb's jaw tightened. Sorry doesn't cut it after what they did. Ellie, putting your suitcases on the curb, shoving you in that garage, that's not family, that's betrayal. Her words were true, but they didn't ease the longing for my daughter, for the girl who'd once run to me with scraped knees. I thought of 1985, a Thanksgiving, when Claire, at 10, helped me bake pumpkin pie. Her laughter filling the kitchen as Frank sang Folsom Prison Blues off-key. That Claire felt so far away now, replaced by a woman who'd chased Highland Ranch dreams and left me behind. Yet I couldn't hate her. She was still my girl, and Sophie, my granddaughter, was a light I refused to let go. "I keep hoping she'll come around," I said, tracing the rim of my mug, for Sophie's sake, if nothing else. Barb reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "She will, Ellie. Maybe not today, but someday. You've shown her what strength looks like. That's a lesson she won't forget." I nodded, wanting to believe her. The past 3 months had changed me. After that rainy August day, when I'd found my suitcases on the curb, I'd started working at the Blue Moon Diner in Benson, a place with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that played Sinatra and Cash. My feet ached after 8-hour shifts, but the tips in my apron pocket were mine, earned by my own hands. I'd found a family there, Joe, the Vietnam vet who told war stories over black coffee. Maria, the single mom who swapped recipes for her kids' favorite tacos. Even Rosie, the owner, who'd slipped me extra pie slices with a wink. They saw me, not as Claire's mother or Frank's widow, but as Ellie, the woman who poured their coffee and listened to their lives. I'd started something else, to a reading group at the Dundee Library, where I taught kids to love books the way I'd taught Claire. We read Charlotte's Web, and their wide eyes reminded me why I'd become a teacher all those years ago. I'd set aside my dream of writing a novel to care for Frank, to raise Claire, but now, in the quiet evenings, I was filling a notebook with stories of my life. It wasn't a book yet, but it was a start, a way to honor the dreams I'd buried. The phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from Maria at the diner, Ellie. "You coming in today? Joe's asking for his favorite coffee gal." I smiled, typing back, "Be there at noon." Work was more than money now, it was purpose, a reason to get up each morning. Barb sipped her coffee, eyeing me. "You're different, stronger, like you've found your spark again." I thought of the garage, the boxes labeled Mom's stuff, the note that had broken me. I had to. "Barb," I said. I was so afraid of losing Claire, of being a burden, that I let myself disappear. But I'm done with that. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. She grinned, raising her mug, to Ellie Harper, the woman who took her life back. I clinked my mug against hers, warmth spreading through me. But the moment was cut short by a knock at the door. My heart skipped, half hoping it was Claire, but I opened it to find a delivery boy with a small package. Inside was a framed photo Claire, Sophie, and me, taken 2 years ago in the tulip garden, laughing under the spring sun. A note was tucked beside it, in Claire's handwriting, "Sophie misses you. We're in a new place now. It's small, but we're managing. I'm not ready to talk, but maybe Sophie can visit soon." I held the frame, my throat tight. Sophie's gap-toothed smile glowed, and Claire's eyes, even in the photo, held a hint of the girl I'd raised. It wasn't an apology, not yet, but it was something a crack in the wall between us. I showed Barb, who raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's a start," she said. "But she's got a long way to go." I nodded, setting the photo on the mantel, next to one of Frank. "It's enough for now," I said. "Sophie's welcome any time. And maybe Claire will come around." That evening, I worked a shift at the Blue Moon Diner, the jukebox playing I Walk the Line. Joe was there, his baseball cap tilted back, grinning as I refilled his coffee. "Ellie, you're the best part of this place," he said, sliding a $5 tip across the counter. Maria stopped by with her kids, who hugged me before running to the jukebox. Rosie caught my eye, nodding approval. "Your family here." "Ellie," she said, and I felt it, deep in my bones. Later, I drove back to Cedar Street, the city lights twinkling under a starry sky. I stood in the tulip garden, the frost crunching under my boots, and thought of Frank. "I'm home, love," I whispered, as if he could hear. The silence was peaceful, not lonely, and I knew I was where I belonged. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Claire's note, Sophie's smile, the life I was building, they were pieces of a puzzle still taking shape. I remembered a moment from 1980 when Claire and I planted tulips, her small hands patting the soil, Frank watching with a proud grin. "They'll bloom, Ellie," he'd said. "Just give 'em time." I was giving Claire time, but I wasn't waiting anymore. I was living, for me, for the woman I had forgotten how to be. The next day, something unexpected happened. Ryan showed up at the diner, his suit rumpled, his eyes tired. "Mrs. Harper," he said, sitting at the counter. "I owe you an apology. I pushed Claire to sell the house, to chase Highland Ranch. I didn't see what it'd do to you. I'm sorry." I poured him coffee, my hand steady. "Thank you, Ryan," I said. "But it's Claire I need to hear from." He nodded, staring into his mug. "She's struggling. The apartment's small, and Sophie keeps asking for you. I think she's starting to get it." I didn't know if he was right, but his words stayed with me. I thought of Barb, who'd planned a housewarming party for me, inviting Joe, Maria, Rosie, even Nathan. The diner folks, the library kids, my notebook of stories, they were my family now, chosen and true. I was healing, not just from Claire's betrayal, but from years of giving too much, of forgetting myself. This journey, dear ones, was about more than a house. It was about finding home in myself, in the people who saw me, in the life I was building one small step at a time. There was more to come: Sophie's visits, Claire's slow awakening, a future I couldn't yet see. If this story touches you, if you've ever had to rebuild from the ground up, I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, Omaha or beyond. Share what home means to you, what keeps you growing. Your story weaves with mine, and I'm listening. The April sun rose over Omaha, casting a soft glow across the tulip garden on Cedar Street, where red and yellow blooms swayed in the morning breeze. I stood on the porch of my home, a mug of Earl Grey warm in my hands, the familiar creak of the floorboards a quiet song under my feet. At 68, I, Eleanor Harper, Ellie to those who hold my heart, had come home. Not just to the colonial brick house with its pale green walls, but to myself. The journey from that rainy August day, when I'd found my suitcases on the curb, to this moment had been long, paved with pain and courage. But it had led me here, to a life I hadn't dared imagine. The house on Cedar Street was mine again, and so was I. 5 months had passed since the confrontation in Nathan Mitchell's law office, where I'd stood up to my daughter, Claire, and her husband, Ryan, demanding the home I'd built with Frank. I could still hear Claire's sharp words. "You're choosing a house over your family," and feel the strength that had risen in me, like a tulip breaking through frost. They'd sold the house back to me for the remaining mortgage balance, funded by my savings and the tips I'd earned at the Blue Moon Diner. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was a declaration I was Eleanor Harper, and I was done being invisible. I moved through the house, dear ones, touching the pieces of my life I'd reclaimed. The living room glowed with morning light, Frank's Johnny Cash records stacked proudly by the old radio, their worn covers a testament to years of love. The fireplace mantel held photos Frank and me in the tulip garden. Claire at 5 with flower on her nose, Sophie's gap-toothed grin from last spring. I'd painted over Claire's cold grey walls, bringing back the pale green Frank and I chose in 78, and the kitchen smelled of cinnamon from the apple pies I baked weekly. This wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary, a place where I'd found myself again. The past months had been a gentle rebuilding, like tending a garden after a harsh winter. I'd kept my job at the Blue Moon Diner in Benson, where the red vinyl booths and jukebox playing I Walk the Line felt like home. My feet still ached after shifts, but the laughter of customers: Joe, the Vietnam vet with his war stories, Maria, the single mom with her taco recipes, Rosie, the owner who called me family, made every hour worth it. They'd become my chosen family, seeing me not as Claire's mother or Frank's widow, but as Ellie, the woman who poured their coffee and shared their joys. I'd started something new, too, a reading group at the Dundee Library, where I taught kids to love books like I'd taught Claire. We read Charlotte's Web, and their bright eyes, wide with wonder at Wilbur's bravery, reminded me why I'd become a teacher. I'd set aside my dream of writing a novel to care for Frank, to raise Claire. But now, in the quiet evenings, I filled a notebook with stories of my life Nebraska winters, Frank's laughter, this journey from loss to renewal. It wasn't a book yet, but it was a spark, a promise to the dreams I'd buried. Barb Mitchell, my dearest friend, had been my anchor through it all. She had thrown a housewarming party in January, filling the backyard with diner folks, library volunteers, and Nathan, her lawyer grandson. We'd lit the outdoor fireplace, the air thick with the smell of apple pie and the strum of a guitar playing country roads. Joe had raised a glass, his voice gruff, to Ellie, the toughest gal in Omaha. I'd laughed, my heart full, knowing this community, my chosen family, was a gift I hadn't expected. But Claire, my daughter, was still a tender wound. Her note from December, tucked with a photo of us in the tulip garden, had been a start. Sophie misses you. Maybe she can visit soon. It wasn't an apology, but it was a crack in the wall between us. I'd hoped for more, for the Claire who'd once read books with me, who'd laughed over pumpkin pies, yet I'd learned to live for myself, not for her approval. Sophie was welcome any time, and I kept her crayons ready in the kitchen, a small hope for the future. That morning, as I sipped my tea, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Claire. Her hair pulled back, her eyes tired but softer than I'd seen in years. Sophie stood beside her, clutching a bouquet of tulips, her gap-toothed smile lighting up the porch. "Grandma," she squealed, throwing her arms around me. I hugged her tight, my heart swelling. "Oh, Sophie. My sweet girl. Look at you bringing flowers." Claire shifted, her hands in her coat pockets. "She wanted to see you," she said, her voice quiet. "And I thought it was time." I nodded, stepping aside. "Come in. I've got coffee on. And there's pie in the kitchen." Sophie ran inside, her sneakers pattering on the hardwood, heading straight for the crayon box I kept on the table. Claire hesitated, then followed, her eyes scanning the green walls, the photos on the mantel. "It looks like it used to," she said, almost to herself, "like when I was a kid." "It's home," I said, pouring coffee. "The way your dad and I made it." She sat at the table, watching Sophie color. The silence was heavy, but not hostile, like a breath held too long. I thought of 1980 when Claire and I planted tulips, her small hands patting the soil, Frank watching with a grin. "They'll bloom." "Ellie," he'd said, "just give 'em time." I was giving Claire time, but I wasn't waiting anymore. "I got your note," I said, sitting across from her. "And the photo." It meant a lot. Claire's eyes met mine, then dropped to her mug. "The apartment's small," she said. "We didn't get Highland Ranch. Our credit. It's a mess. Sophie's happy, though she talks about you all the time." I smiled, glancing at Sophie, who was drawing a tulip. "She's welcome here any time. You know that." Claire nodded, her fingers tightening around the mug. I was wrong. Mom, about a lot of things. I thought selling the house would fix everything, make us happy. But I didn't see what it did to you. I'm not good at saying sorry, but I'm trying. Her words weren't a full apology, but they were honest, raw in a way I hadn't heard from her in years. I saw the girl who'd read with me, buried under years of chasing a life that wasn't hers. "I forgive you, Claire," I said, my voice steady. "Not because you've earned it, but because I want my heart to be light. I love you, always will, but I'm living for me now, too." She blinked, her eyes glistening, and for a moment, I saw my daughter, not the stranger who'd written that note. "Sophie can come next weekend," she said, "if that's okay." "It's more than okay," I said, smiling. We'll plant tulips, won't we? Sophie. Sophie grinned, holding up her drawing. Yeah. Grandma red ones. Claire stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. I should go. Ryan's waiting, but maybe I'll come with Sophie next time. I walked them to the door, hugging Sophie again, then Claire, her embrace brief but real. As they drove away, I stood on the porch, the tulips swaying, and felt a peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough a seed planted, with time to grow. That evening, I taught my reading group at the library, the kids' laughter filling the room as we read Charlotte's Web. I thought of Claire at their age, her voice soft as she read about Wilbur's courage. I was writing more, too, my notebook filling with stories of Nebraska winters, Frank's love, this journey from loss to light. I'd shared a few pages with Barb, who'd teared up and said, Ellie, this is your book. You're doing it. The next day, I worked at the Blue Moon Diner, the jukebox playing Ring of Fire. Joe tipped extra, Maria brought her kids, and Rosie slipped me a slice of pie. You're our star. Ellie, she said, and I felt it deep in my soul. Later, Barb hosted a spring gathering in my backyard, the fireplace glowing, the air sweet with pie and laughter. Nathan strummed his guitar, Joe told stories, and Maria's kids ran through the tulips. I raised a glass, my voice steady. To home, not just a place, but the people who see you. They cheered, and I felt Frank's presence, his voice whispering, You're my sunshine. Ellie, I was home, not just on Cedar Street, but in my life, in the woman I'd become. I thought of 1978, when we'd moved in. Claire a baby, Frank singing off key. I'd been strong then, and I was stronger now, at 68, with years ahead to live, to love, to write. This journey, dear ones, taught me that no matter your age, you're never too old to start again, to bloom like a tulip in spring. Claire's steps toward me, Sophie's laughter, the family I found at the diner and library, they're my sunrise, my proof that love endures, in all its messy glory. If this story moves you, if you've ever found home in yourself or others, I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Omaha or beyond. Share what makes your heart bloom, what keeps you rising. Your story is part of mine, and I'm listening.